Some women speak, and people hear, but they forget. Some women stay quiet, and every word they finally speak carries weight. Today, we uncover the hidden strategy behind emotional quietness and why it makes them unstoppable. Emotional quietness is not just a personality trait. It is a deliberate strategy that women can use to influence the world around them in ways that are often invisible yet incredibly powerful. When a woman cultivates emotional calm and restraint, she is not merely suppressing feelings or avoiding confrontation. She is creating a controlled environment in which her presence alone can direct attention, shape perceptions, and guide outcomes. This is a form of influence that does not require volume, drama, or constant assertion, and that is precisely why it is so effective. People are conditioned to respond to emotional energy, and when that energy is measured and intentional, it commands attention without effort. The woman who has mastered emotional quietness understands that her silence is not absence. It is a signal of strength, focus, and authority. By choosing when to speak, when to act, and when to remain still, she ensures that every interaction carries weight and that every reaction is calculated to reinforce her presence and her influence. At the core of the strategy is awareness. An emotionally quiet woman observes her environment and the people in it with precision. She notices the subtle dynamics of conversation, the unspoken tensions, and the underlying motives that others may overlook. This observation allows her to understand not only what is happening, but also what is likely to happen next. She can anticipate reactions, foresee conflicts, and identify opportunities to assert influence without overtly doing so. This is the first layer of emotional quietness. As a tool, it allows her to move strategically rather than reactively. Where others may be drawn into the chaos of emotion, she remains anchored. Her calm becomes a stabilizing force that subtly reshapes the energy around her, often before anyone else even realizes it. This is influence in its purest form, invisible, subtle, yet undeniably effective. Emotional quietness also communicates control in a way that is both subtle and profound. When a woman does not react impulsively, she signals to others that she is the master of her emotions, not the other way around. This mastery is magnetic because humans instinctively respect self-regulation. People are drawn to those who can manage themselves under pressure because it suggests reliability, competence, and authority. A woman who responds thoughtfully rather than reactively is immediately seen as someone who is deliberate, intelligent, and composed. Her quietness becomes a kind of power that is recognized intuitively, even if it is not consciously acknowledged. It creates a psychological impact that loudness cannot replicate because it is rooted in control rather than performance. Her calm is a declaration that she cannot be easily manipulated, provoked, or undermined. And this is exactly why emotional quietness functions as a strategic tool. Part of the strategic advantage of emotional quietness is timing. A woman who has mastered the skill knows when her voice will carry the most impact. She understands that speaking too often or reacting too quickly can dilute her influence, whereas speaking at the right moment amplifies it exponentially. This requires patience, awareness, and self-discipline. It is the ability to weigh every situation, consider potential consequences, and then respond in a way that maximizes effect. The people around her may not immediately understand why her words have such weight, but they feel it instinctively. They notice the difference between a thoughtless reaction and a deliberate response. The quiet woman leverages this difference to shape outcomes, guide decisions, and command respect, all without needing to assert herself loudly or aggressively. Emotional quietness also functions as a shield, protecting a woman's energy and focus. In many social and professional contexts, drama, manipulation, and emotional volatility can drain those who engage with it. By remaining quiet and composed, a woman creates a buffer against external chaos. She does not allow others' emotional turbulence to dictate her behavior or disrupt her equilibrium. This is strategic because it preserves her mental clarity, her decision-making power, and her ability to act with intention. It also positions her as a stable presence in the eyes of others. People instinctively rely on and respect those who are unshakable, recognizing that their calm reflects competence and reliability. In this way, emotional quietness becomes both a defensive and offensive strategy. It protects the woman while simultaneously enhancing her influence. Another dimension of using emotional quietness as a tool is the element of unpredictability. When a woman does not react to every provocation, demand, or social pressure, she becomes less predictable to those around her. This unpredictability creates a subtle power dynamic. Others cannot anticipate her responses or control her behavior through manipulation or expectation. Her silence and measured reactions keep people off balance in a way that is strategic rather than hostile. They are compelled to engage with her on her terms rather than trying to provoke a knee-jerk reaction. This form of influence is particularly effective in professional or high-stakes environments where power dynamics are constantly shifting. By controlling her emotional responses, she controls the narrative and establishes herself as a presence to be reckoned with. Emotional quietness is also intimately tied to authenticity and integrity. The woman who uses this strategy is not being quiet to manipulate superficially. She is quiet because she understands her worth, her boundaries, and her priorities. Her restraint is rooted in self-respect rather than fear or insecurity. This authenticity amplifies her influence because people instinctively recognize the difference between a person who is genuinely composed and someone who is merely pretending. Her quietness becomes a visible sign of her inner strength, signaling to others that she is grounded, self-aware, and capable. This is why emotionally quiet women are not only noticed, they are taken seriously. Their calm communicates competence and stability in a way that is impossible to fake, and this makes it an incredibly effective tool for shaping perception and commanding respect. The use of emotional quietness as a strategic tool extends to all areas of life. In professional environments, it allows a woman to lead, negotiate, and influence without needing to compete for attention through volume or aggression. In personal relationships, it allows her to assert boundaries, guide interactions, and foster respect without conflict or coercion. In social settings, it allows her to navigate complex dynamics with subtle authority and presence. Across all contexts, the principles are the same. Observe, pause, process, and respond deliberately. By mastering these steps, a woman ensures that her influence is felt and respected, even when it is not overtly acknowledged. This strategic use of emotional quietness transforms ordinary behavior into a powerful instrument for impact and authority. Finally, the long-term effect of using emotional quietness strategically is cumulative. Every measured response, every controlled reaction, and every deliberate word contributes to a reputation of competence, reliability, and authority. Over time, people begin to recognize that this woman is not someone to be underestimated or dismissed. Her presence carries weight because it has been consistently grounded in self-awareness and thoughtful action. Emotional quietness becomes both her signature and her advantage, a form of influence that is sustainable, replicable, and highly respected. By choosing silence, patience, and intentionality, she wields power that is subtle, sophisticated, and undeniable. Controlled presence and selective responses are among the most powerful tools a woman can possess, especially when she understands the strategic advantage they provide. In a world that often rewards loudness, impulsiveness, and immediate emotional reactions, a woman who exercises control over her presence and carefully selects how and when to respond stands out immediately. This is not about suppression or avoidance. It is about mastery. It is about creating a presence so intentional and deliberate that others naturally recognize authority, competence, and credibility without the woman ever needing to assert it overtly. When she moves through life with this kind of controlled presence, every action she takes, every word she chooses, and every gesture she makes carries weight because it is purposeful. She becomes a person whose influence is felt subtly but undeniably, and whose respect is earned without struggle. People instinctively recognize that someone who governs her own energy and reactions possesses power, and they respond accordingly. This is the essence of why controlled presence and selective responses generate lasting authority. The first aspect of controlled presence is the ability to project confidence without needing constant validation. Confidence in this context is not performative, it internalized. It is a quiet certainty that emerges from self-awareness, competence, and emotional intelligence. A woman with this kind of presence does not need to dominate a conversation or seek approval to assert her significance. Her posture, tone, and measured expressions convey stability and authority. People notice it immediately, often subconsciously. When others feel the steadiness in her energy, they are more likely to trust her judgment, follow her lead, and take her seriously. Controlled presence creates a psychological environment in which her opinions, decisions, and boundaries are respected because her energy communicates that she is grounded, self-assured, and reliable. This is not accidental. It is intentional. Every gesture and every pause is an element of influence that contributes to her authority. Selective responses are the next layer of this strategy. Knowing when to speak, when to remain silent, and when to act is critical for establishing lasting respect. Thoughtless or reactive responses often dilute authority because they signal a lack of control. In contrast, deliberate responses signal mastery. A woman who chooses her words and actions with intention ensures that her communication carries maximum impact. People naturally pay attention to what she says because they know it has been considered, weighed, and measured. The combination of silence and precision in response creates a magnetic authority that cannot be replicated through volume or aggression. It positions her as someone who commands respect not by force, but by the very deliberate structure of her interactions. Selective response is therefore not avoidance, it is strategy. It allows her to shape perceptions, influence outcomes, and control interactions without needing to escalate conflict or assert dominance overtly. Controlled presence and selective responses also protect her energy. By being intentional in her actions and responses, a woman avoids unnecessary emotional drain caused by impulsive reactions or engagement with drama. In social or professional settings, she is able to maintain clarity of thought and composure, even when others are chaotic or provocative. This control is strategic because it preserves her ability to act effectively when it matters most. People unconsciously respect this kind of self-regulation because it signals maturity, stability, and inner strength. They recognize, often without articulating it, that her calm is not passive but a sign of mastery over herself and the environment around her. Her presence becomes a stabilizing force, drawing others to her for guidance, reassurance, or leadership because they sense her groundedness and authority. Another dimension of controlled presence is the creation of boundaries that are felt without needing explicit assertion. A woman who responds selectively naturally sets limits because people recognize, through her demeanor and measured interactions, that she cannot be easily manipulated or provoked. Her calm and intentional energy communicates without words that she is not available to unnecessary drama, coercion, or pressure. This creates respect because it signals that she values herself, her time, and her energy, and expects others to do the same. Unlike confrontation or verbal assertion, this method of boundary setting is subtle, sophisticated, and highly effective. It shapes how others interact with her while maintaining dignity and composure, reinforcing the authority she has cultivated through her controlled presence. Selective responses also cultivate curiosity and engagement. People are naturally drawn to those who do not reveal everything at once or react predictably to every situation. When a woman chooses what to share and when to act, she creates a sense of intrigue and depth. Others want to understand her, to engage with her, and to anticipate her next move. This curiosity reinforces respect because it places her in a position of influence without overt effort. The less reactive she is, the more her actions and words are noticed, analyzed, and valued. She becomes someone whose presence and input are sought after, not because she demands attention, but because she has cultivated a pattern of thoughtfulness, intentionality, and consistency that naturally draws respect and influence. In leadership and professional contexts, controlled presence and selective responses are particularly potent. Colleagues, clients, and superiors notice individuals who manage themselves effectively under pressure. A woman who embodies these qualities conveys competence, reliability, and authority. Her strategic restraint demonstrates that she understands the dynamics of her environment and can navigate complex situations with skill. In negotiations, decision-making, and conflict resolution, her deliberate presence and selective interventions often yield results that louder or more reactive individuals cannot achieve. She influences outcomes through subtle authority, demonstrating that leadership is as much about mastery over self and perception as it is about position or title. Her authority becomes ingrained because it is built on consistent patterns of thoughtful action rather than on temporary displays of emotion or dominance. Controlled presence also reinforces long-term personal relationships. Friends, family, and partners learn to value her judgment, her composure, and her measured reactions. They recognize that her silence or her careful choice of words is not distance but intention. This cultivates trust and respect, because people know that her interactions are guided by awareness, insight, and integrity. They understand that she will respond appropriately and meaningfully when it matters most, making her influence enduring and deeply respected. Emotional impulsiveness, in contrast, often undermines these relationships because it introduces unpredictability, instability, or drama. Controlled presence and selective responses create a reputation of reliability and discernment, which strengthens social bonds and fosters lasting authority. The strategic combination of controlled presence and selective responses is also cumulative over time. Every deliberate action, measured reaction, and thoughtful intervention builds a consistent pattern of influence. People begin to recognize that this woman operates with intention, self-awareness, and strategic thinking. Her energy becomes synonymous with authority, and her words and presence are weighted because they are rare, meaningful, and deliberate. This cumulative effect amplifies respect because it demonstrates consistency, integrity, and mastery over oneself and one's environment. The woman who cultivates these qualities becomes someone whose influence is not fleeting but enduring, and whose authority is both recognized and respected across contexts. Ultimately, controlled presence and selective responses transform a woman's interactions, reputation, and impact. They create a space where her voice is heard because it is purposeful, her presence is felt because it is grounded, and her authority is recognized because it is consistent. In a world where impulsive reactions and loud behaviors dominate, the woman who exercises control over her presence and carefully selects her responses stands apart as a figure of sophistication, strategy, and undeniable influence. Her calm is not passive. Her choices are not random. Her influence is not accidental. This deliberate cultivation of energy, attention, and timing allows her to shape perceptions, guide outcomes, and command respect in a way that is subtle, sustainable, and profoundly effective.